Hey everyone, this is Patrick from Code That Converts, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about why maybe you shouldn't use carousel components on your Shopify store. This is an example of a carousel right here. Just take a look at it. I think we can all agree these things look cool as hell, right? And you might look at popular sites like Amazon or eBay, just like big e-commerce brands, or maybe you might look up popular e-commerce designs or popular Shopify store designs of 2022 or 2023, and you might see people using these carousels on their site and think to yourself, if these people are using it, maybe I should use it too. Well, if you thought that, you would be wrong, sir and or ma'am, you would be wrong, because these things have been studied, and studies have shown that they are known to kill conversions and sales. Now, with that in mind, I got a question for you, the viewer at home. Do you want a cool looking moving carousel in your Shopify store, or do you want to actually get sales and conversions? I know you're here for sales and conversions, so we're going to talk more about why you shouldn't use these, and at the end, I'm going to provide some alternatives you can do instead. Back in 2012, Eric Runyon, the technical director of the University of Notre Dame, decided to run a study on the university's carousel components. He had set up a carousel on one of the university's most trafficked pages, and with the help of Google Analytics, he analyzed the performance of that carousel over a 3-month period, and he found some shocking results. According to him, only 1% of the total web traffic that hit the page with the carousel even stopped to interact with it. And out of that 1%, only 84% of them stayed and long enough to actually see the next slide of the carousel. So only 84% of that 1% even went to the next slide of the carousel. And then an even smaller percent than 84 actually made it past the second slide. At this point, you might be thinking, well, the University of Notre Dame is not an e-commerce site, so why is this relevant? But similar studies done on e-com sites showed data that very closely resembled Eric's. There was another study done on carousels by a company called Shopify, which focuses on mobile e-commerce. And they found that carousels only convert better when the customer has context about the type of content that's going to be inside of the carousel. For example, they only recommended using carousels on a product page because most customers expect for a product page to have a gallery of images of that product. So they use carousels to show that gallery. Like they said, this makes a lot of sense because customers expect product pages to have a lot of images showing the product off. We discussed some of the data about carousels. Now let's dive deeper into the actual issues with carousels that contribute to this data. As I said previously, the study at Shopify showed that most carousel components don't provide proper context to the customer about the type of content that's going to be inside of the carousel. And that's actually one of the biggest issues with carousels. Because a customer has no context about what's in the carousel, they kind of look at it as being an ad and they might ignore it. Apart from that, there are some other reasons why carousel components don't really work that well. One reason is that they provide too many choices to customers. Imagine you have a carousel and each slide has a call to action with a button. Obviously, you want your customer to click the button. Every slide of the carousel has a choice for a customer to make. There's a good chance the customer might not make any of them. So on the off chance that the customer actually proceeds to the next slide of the carousel, there's a good chance they might not even make that choice. Another big issue with carousels is that oftentimes the design from each slide is not uniform and consistent. Because of this, if the customer actually manages to get to the next slide of the carousel, they'll be confused because the design is vastly different from the previous slide. Yet another big issue with carousels is that they often have heavy JavaScript code. Now, whenever a page loads on your website, JavaScript is run in the browser and loaded before the page loads, and that contributes to how quickly a page loads. Oftentimes, a lot of carousel components contain a lot of heavy and unneeded JavaScript code, and that contributes to a slower page load speed, which is bad for conversions as well. This is especially bad on people using mobile devices or their phones, because people expect to have very quick and seamless experiences when using their mobile phones on e-commerce stores. Speaking of mobile phones, that's the last issue I wanted to mention with carousels. Usually carousel components are designed with only one platform in mind, and they don't think about how the experience would be on the other platform. So usually carousels might work really well on desktops and computers, but they might have a really bad experience on phones, or vice versa. Now, there are ways to potentially get around some of these issues, but you really gotta ask yourself, is the juice worth the squeeze? And in my opinion, it isn't. Okay, so if carousels are out, what do I think you should do instead? Well, the first thing I think you should do is figure out what the most important product, offer, or value proposition your Shopify store and your brand can offer to your customers. That way, when you figure it out, you can optimize a given page with that in mind and see much better results than using a carousel. Let's say, for example, it's a holiday season, right? At the moment of recording this, it's about to be Valentine's Day. Let's say you want to run a Valentine's Day sale for your products or for a specific collection. You can optimize a given page that has high traffic on your site with a relevant call to action about the sale you're going to run. Doing that is a much better move than using a carousel and stuffing a bunch of competing marketing messages inside of it. And if you want to spice things up with that, you might look into using video content. Video content is known to be very engaging, and studies have shown that people who engage with video on a store were more likely to buy a product or service. So if you're able to create video content for your Shopify store, that might be a much better move than trying to use a carousel component. Lastly, if you're trying to use carousels to show off a bunch of products in a collection at once, a better move is to use a call to action with a banner like this one in the example you see on the screen right now, and send customers over to the collection page that includes all the products, or you can use a grid layout like in the example I'm showing you right now. These are my thoughts on using carousels on your Shopify store. Now, if you heard all this and you still want to use a carousel on your store, that's fine, but now you know exactly what you're getting into. If you're going to use it, just make sure you provide your customers with proper context about the type of content that's going to be inside of it. That way, there's a higher chance that they won't ignore the carousel and actually will interact with it. If you enjoyed the video or found it helpful, please subscribe to the channel and join our email list at codethatconverts.com. I have a lot more content planned for you to help you improve the user experience and shopping experience of your Shopify store, and to help you get more engagement and sales from your customers.